Hello, yes, you at home. This is Commissioner of the NBA speaking to you, Adam Silver. Here's a message in courtesy of BenchMob in collaboration with the NBA Store. When BenchMob hits 1,000 subscribers, they'll be giving away a free NBA jersey to a lucky subscriber. So just do all the things listed on the screen. God damn it.
2 words. Chris Paul must watch TV. Nah, just kidding. But Chris Paul, he
CP0.
CP0. Nah. I'm not gonna disrespect Chris Paul. I'm not a huge CP3 fan myself. I think this has come to the later part of his career. He's obviously not the same player he was, but one thing he does bring is mentorship. And the home for Chris Paul, where to next? It's going to be a real question. Obviously, it already is this off-season as it started, but how are you feeling about Chris Paul and where you could see him, finishing his career? And what impact, will he have on those teams that you pick?
Well, as I touched on, we just recorded a video, talked about the possible trade destinations for Bradley Beal, possibly heading to the Suns, and we mentioned about Chris Paul possibly going to one of these teams to be a mentor. And I think I touched on and said that Chris Paul isn't going to be the same Chris Paul that we saw even from 2021 Phoenix Suns championship run, where they nearly won the title against the Bucks. You're not going to see that kind of Chris Paul. You're definitely not going to see the Rockets Chris Paul, where he nearly brought them to the finals against that 73-win Golden State Warriors team. And even in saying that, you're definitely not going to get the Hornets Chris Paul. So if you're going to take on Chris Paul on your roster and you're going to sign him as a free agent, you got to know where he fits in and what to expect from him. And I think, like you touched on, his mentorship, his years of experience, being able to pass on that to any of the younger point guards that have taken the reins or been handed the keys to the franchise, I think that'll be invaluable experience. But I still think off the bench, as like a sixth man or as the backup point guard, I think, personally speaking, he can be a guy that can come off and help lead that second unit and provide stability.
For a championship team, or do you see more of these under...
maybe some of the teams that are a little bit lower ranked in the standings and battling for lottery picks, I could probably see him possibly being a starting point guard still in those squads. But any competing team, any championship team, I honestly don't see him being a starter in these kind of situations. I think if I'm going to put one competitive team or one competing team, as a fit for Chris Paul, I'd say maybe the Cleveland Cavaliers, because they got 2 young guards in Darius Garland. You can classify Donovan Mitchell as pretty young. Leading the way there, and Darius Garland and CP3 have a really good relationship from their times when he attended Chris Paul's camps. I think he was part of some of the AAU teams that Chris Paul...
CP3 Elite.
CP3 Elite. So just that relationship that him and Darius have, I think, I could see that be the right place for him to continue to mentor Darius and help him obviously continue to develop and still be a handy backup to those guys. And he does have a good relationship with Donovan Mitchell as well, from what I heard.
I like that.
Especially because when Donovan Mitchell was coming into the league out of college, he actually trained and worked out with PG and Chris Paul, and CP3 was one of the main guys and the main players in him actually declaring for the draft.
Oh, really?
Because after those workouts, they basically told him you're NBA ready. So again, through that relationship they've had, I think I could definitely see that work. And Chris Paul again could be a very handy player come playoff time. Obviously, he hasn't had the playoff success we'd like, but come playoff time, when those guys might be struggling, he can help bring that second unit together and possibly be the glue to that team that they need.
Yeah. In a dream scenario, it's I reckon Cleveland's probably the most competitive team that potentially could land him. And it's we all see the potential. Mobley's there. He's bound to break out. He probably will reach superstardom one day. Donovan's borderline close enough. Darius is all-star caliber. Maybe this is Chris Paul's real last stop, potentially winning an NBA championship. And as much as I hate him, I hate to love him. I would love to see him win a championship, and Cleveland's probably the the best option here, I reckon. You could argue Boston, but I don't think they would be willing to take a chance on a guy like Chris Paul.
Yeah, especially when they got Malcolm Brogdon in that second unit leading the way. I mean, probably at this stage, you'd think that besides the experience factor, on a production standpoint, Malcolm Brogdon probably gives you more on both sides of the ball, and he's likely to stay healthier throughout the course of the year and around the important times of the year when obviously the playoffs roll around. In terms of like one team I could see him go to that isn't as competitive, it's maybe the Spurs. I just think with Victor Wembanyama coming in, the relationship he has with Greg Popovich from the times at Team USA, and obviously over the years that they've battled against one another, I think they both respect each other tremendously, and I definitely could see that work. I think he'd provide invaluable experience, especially to that young core, Sohan, Vassell, Keldon Johnson, those kind of players, and then obviously with Vic coming in, what better way to help him flourish and develop than have a guy who's spent so many years in the league.
Yeah.
Not only do you have the best coach, one of the best coaches in history, you have one of the best point guards in history alongside you. It's a no-brainer. So I think I could see him possibly start on the Spurs as well.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Trey Jones.
Yeah.
But I think a guy like Chris Paul is probably still an upgrade on Trey Jones despite the age.
Yeah, you could argue. That would be a real smart move, I think. Because I could personally see Chris Paul, I don't know if he would, but it just feels like he's one of the guys who would coach after his NBA career. Playing under Pop, can't play under any better of a coach. So it could be a real good learning experience. And if he did come off the bench, hey, you can only learn more coming off the bench. After a guy like Trey Jones, and maybe if he was there, they could make a playoff push. Yeah,
for sure. But yeah, those are the two teams that I've got him penciled in to possibly land at. But there's a number of other teams which you're about to touch on. But I think those two that really stood out to me when I was looking at all the teams that I think he could possibly fit in well at.
Yeah, well, the other two I won't harp on them too much, but I had the Charlotte Hornets, and it's because of the troublesome with the roster. A lot of players getting into trouble, I should say. James Bouknight, Miles Bridges in the past. LaMelo Ball, he hasn't really done anything, but the way he's
a bit immature.
Yeah, the way he provokes himself, puts himself out there to even the media and interviews, things of that nature. You could tell he really does miss a veteran player. And I don't think Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward, I don't see these guys as being vocal guys in the locker room necessarily. And I think Chris Paul coming in could kind of pave the way for these young guys, and they could even push for a playoff spot, because when Rozier, Melo, Bridges were all together, they won 43, 44 games. They made the play-in and just missed out. So that could be huge for the Charlotte Hornets.
Just touched on the Hornets and comparing it to a similar situation as what CP3 was in during the bubble, during that time when he got traded to the OKC Thunder for Russ.
Yeah.
Same sort of results. No one expected much of the Thunder.
Yeah.
That young roster, they ended up making some noise around that bubble time, and they nearly knocked off the Rockets in that series if it weren't for a big performance from James Harden. But you could see no one gave him a chance, but he helped. I reckon you could probably give a lot of credit to CP3 and the progression that SGA has made over these last few years because of what Chris Paul has probably instilled in him in terms of work ethic, in terms of that mindset that he needs to have to be an elite point guard and an elite guard in this league.
100%. The other team, Memphis Grizzlies, obvious one. Ja misses 25 games, and it could really deter their season, I think. Because you add the 25 games he misses, say, hypothetically, I hope he doesn't get injured, but if he did, if he missed 15 to 20 games, that's already
half the season.
You bring a guy like Chris Paul in, it almost guarantees you that you probably won't miss the playoffs. He's someone who can adapt to any system. He could, come into any organization, probably make an impact, no matter what Chris Paul you're getting. So obviously Memphis, I think that's a pretty obvious one. And once again, mentor for Ja Morant. Ja's probably lacked veteran presence at the Grizzlies so far. And they were questioning bringing in a guy like Carmelo Anthony. Is it worth it? Is it not? I think looking back now, you would say 100% it's worth it. Melo could have helped a guy like John Morant last season, and they kind of passed on him. So, yeah, those are my two teams, and whatever team he lands on, I hope, they get the best out of the back end of Chris Paul's career, and he can make an impact. But personally, I don't see him winning an NBA title, and it's sad to see because I don't think he's a loser. He's a winner in this league, but it's just like too many chances. It's just too far gone for me to say he'll be an NBA champ, and I hope this doesn't get clipped and he doesn't win one.
What's his relationship like with Monty Williams? Is that the reason why he's no longer?
It's still good.
Still good. Well, I'm just looking at your screen. The Pistons there. Obviously, Monty Williams, the new coach of Detroit.
Yeah.
That could be. I know they got the guard situation pretty much locked in place with Cade, Jaden Ivey. You got Killian Hayes as well, but we don't really know what Killian Hayes brings long term. So again, having a guy like CP3, if he's willing to come off the bench for the Pistons, again, provide mentorship, veteran presence to those young guys, that can help fast track that Pistons rebuild and possibly bring them to a potential playoff push. So we just have to wait and see. But that one's probably a little bit more unrealistic, but you never know.
Yeah. No, I would like it. I mean, sixth man of the year type thing. If he was at the Pistons, I mean, it'd be nice to see you got Ivy, Cade there. They also lack veteran presence, so a lot of teams could definitely utilise Chris Paul. He's definitely not out of this league. The Shanghai jokes might have to end.
They're kind of getting a bit old, eh?
Yeah, kind of getting a bit old. But at the same time, it's like he's clearly not the player he was, and I don't think we should expect Chris Paul to ever be like an all-star caliber guard again. It's
20 and 10 with 2 steals. That's not going to happen. You'd be lucky to get 15 and 8 from him nowadays. You know what I mean? You're probably looking at that 13 and 6, 12.
Especially him as a scorer. I know he doesn't rely on his athleticism, but it's still like he loses that quick first step. Like it's just going to be tougher.
And it was already tough for him, obviously, with his height and how, he was a small guard coming into the league, and he always had to try and make do with craftier moves to try and step backs, the little mid-range pull-ups that he specialised in. So, when you take away the athleticism and you're a small guard at the age of 36, 37, 38, it is very tough. So, I mean, like I said, we just have to be realistic about what Chris Paul's production will be, and that will then probably, likely change people's perspective on what he'll bring to a franchise and why a specific franchise might target him.